Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Racing Form Breeders' Cup 2022 webinar. I'm Brad Free, and pleased to be joined by legendary handicapper, author, veteran horse player, Andy Beyer. Andy, thanks for joining us today on the Breeders' Cup webinar.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've been poring over the DRFTVs for the last 2 days, and I hope we have some smart things to say.
Well, we have some things to say. Whether they're smart or not remains to be seen. I'm Brad Free, if I didn't introduce myself. And before we get started, and by the way, we are going to cover all 14 races. Some of the races we have convictions, some of the races we have selections. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on some of the races in which we don't have a whole lot of intelligent things to say, but we will address all 14 races. Before Andy and I jump in, I want to get some business out of the way. First of all, if you are betting the Breeders' Cup, you should do it on DRF Bets. You can join DRF Bets today and use promo code STAKES, STAKES, all caps, and get started with a $200 first deposit match bonus. That's $200 in free money. You also get free access to Formulator Past Performances. And to sign up, you can go to drf.com/bet for more information. That's drf.com/bet. Secondly, Breeders' Cup past performances are available now on drf.com. You can get the most trusted data in horse racing and exclusive Beyer speed figures exclusively in Daily Racing Form past performances. Visit shop.drf.com for more information. And finally, Daily Racing Form offers a Breeders' Cup package that includes a whole lot of stuff. DRF past performances, clocker reports, betting strategies, and more. If you sign up now, you can get 36% off the retail price, and you can do that by going to shop.drf.com. That's the business we needed to take care of. Now it's time to start handicapping. We have 14 races to go through, and we'll take them in chronological order. We start off on Friday in race number 7. And it's race number, what race is it? It's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. It's race number 6. This is a new race. It's only 4 years into running, and all 4 years, it's been a relatively formful race. 5.5 furlongs on grass for 2-year-olds. The first or second favorite has won all 4 years. All 4 runnings have been won in gate-to-wire fashion. It's a sprint for 2-year-olds. You would expect speed to be rewarded, and it has been. Andy, what do you think about the Juvenile Turf Sprint? This is a race that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on. What do you like?
Well, looking back in the last couple of years, last year's European contingent looked fairly comparable to this year's. Wesley Ward horse won the race, got a figure of 84. 2 years ago, another Wesley Ward horse, the great Golden Pal, who's 8 for 8 on the turf in the U.S., he won with a figure of 90. So to me, his horse Love Reigns, who earned a figure of 89 at Saratoga, has already shown that he can run fast enough, to win a typical running of this race. So I'm not going to get clever and try to ferret out a European to beat him. I think he's the horse.
I agree. Love Reigns, a very fast 2-year-old filly trained by Wesley Ward. When she won her career debut by more than 9 lengths at Keeneland this spring, it was the fastest turf sprint by a 2-year-old since Keeneland began running turf sprints. She's drawn inside. I think she's the best horse in the race. I agree with Andy. I do respect the European number 12, the Platinum Queen, who did something that's really quite amazing, and that's defeat a field of older horses. You rarely see 2-year-olds run against older horses. The Platinum Queen won the Prix de l'Abbé. She was the favorite that day, a 2-year-old filly defeating older males in France. She's good, but from post number 12 with all kinds of speed to her inside, including Oxmoor, Sharp as Attack, Tyler's Tribe, Speedboat Beach, I think that the Platinum Queen is up against it based on trip. I agree with Andy. I think it's number 2, Love Reigns, the most probable winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint. Let's move on to a dirt race and talk about race number 7. It's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, a mile and 1/16. This is a race in which trainer Todd Pletcher, who is one of the top trainers in the country, of course he is, he's started 14 horses in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and has yet to win this race. 4 runner-up finishes, 2 second-place finishes. That might change this year. Am I right about that, Andy?
I think it could be a Pletcher exacta. When I first looked at this race, I mean, I thought Chocolate Gelato looked like clearly the horse. I mean, she had earned a figure of 92 at Saratoga, by far better than anyone had run, and came back and ran well in the Frisette and the Slop. But initially when we had looked at Atomically, I questioned the time of her race. I mean, there was a day of racing for offspring of Florida-based stallions at Gulfstream, and they had a filly division and a colt division, and the filly division came up 13 buyer points faster, and the horses didn't look like anything, and we initially didn't believe it, and then studied the race a little more, and finally came to the conclusion that it was legitimate, and the figure of 83 for Atomically was sound. On top of that, if you watch that race, she had a brutal trip. There's a short run to the first turn at Gulfstream in the mile and the 16th races. She was parked 5 wide around the turn, and still went on to win very impressively. I think she's going to be a price. And the only thing I worry about is the other Pletcher horse.
That other Pletcher is Chocolate Gelato. Just to add a little bit to what Andy said regarding Atomically, not only did she win with a big number and overcame a compromising trip, the 3rd place finisher from that race, Darth Vader, came back to score a decisive victory, somewhat flattering the form of Atomically. And Atomically would not be the first horse from the Florida Stallion Series to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. It was accomplished first in 2010 by Awesome Feather. So she has some things working in her favor, including the fact that Andy Beyer likes Atomically at odds of 12-1. I went with the other Pletcher. She's the chalk, number 10, Chocolate Gelato. She won the Frisette last time by only a length, but I thought it was a better than looked victory. She overcame a little bit of I don't know, I don't want to call it a compromising trip, but she won well, and she wore down a very game rail trip front runner to win by a length. The Frisette has produced more Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winners than any other prep. 14 times has the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies been won by a horse exiting the prep. I like Chocolate Gelato. She's 7-2. She breaks from post number 10. That's okay. Both Andy and I like Pletcher to score his first win in the Juvenile Fillies. Andy likes the 12-1 shot. Atomically, I got chalk on my face, and that's number 10, Chocolate Gelato. Okay, we have a lot to go through, so let's jump on to the next race, and that would be Juvenile Fillies again, only this time it's a race on turf. Juvenile Fillies on turf. Interestingly, even though Europeans have become more and more influential in the Breeders' Cup, the Juvenile Fillies turf has been won by a European import only twice from 14 times. And this year, they have the morning line favorite. That's number 10, Meditate. Andy, you and I talked about this race a little bit before we started taping this. Meditate, she's arguably the class of the field, but there might be reasons to oppose arguably the best filly in the race. What do you think about Meditate, and who do you like?
Well, I'm a little wary of Aidan O'Brien horses. I mean, according to the Formulator stats, O'Brien has won with 7 out of his last 98 foreign shippers into the U.S. And that on paper this horse looks good, but I mean his horses have disappointed a lot. And on top of that, the 1 mile distance is a little uncertain. I mean, she faded at 7 in Europe, so I don't trust her. I picked her on top. Just sort of out of default. I would have gone for number 13, Zygera, who I think has some good hidden dope and will be a price, but post position 13, going a mile at Keeneland is not good.
I agree. And I also agree with what you said about Meditate. It looks like the farther they run, the more vulnerable she becomes. She did finish second in a pair of Group 1s overseas in Ireland and England. She's the class of the field. I get that. And you can probably identify her as the best horse in the race going in. I wouldn't want to take Meditate at a short price. And for that very reason, I went in a different direction. I took another filly coming in from Europe. She's only started twice. She's number 12, Midnight Mile. And she overcame a trip last time out in her comeback. It was a grade 3 at Newmarket, and she won by a head, making her first start since July. She wants to run farther than she was running that day. That was a 7 furlong race. She's lightly raced. She's making only the third start of her career. The Juvenile Fillies Turf has been won 8 times by fillies, making only their third career start. So lack of seasoning is not an issue with regards to the Juvenile Fillies Turf. I like number 12, Midnight Mile. She's listed at 10-1. I think she's going to give a good account of herself. I also am interested in gambling. You can bet on more than one horse in a race, by the way. Number 11, G. Laurie. When you get a chance, viewers, take a look on Formulator and watch the trip of G. Laurie in the Grade 1 Natoma last time out. It was brutal. She finished third. I think she could have won that race with a different trip, but take a look on Formulator, go to the replay section, and you can find out for yourself with regards to number 11, G. Laurie. So I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm taking a couple of price sources, 10-1 and 12-1, Midnight Mile and G. Laurie. Andy picked the favorite, Meditate, with some trepidation, and Andy also suggests taking a good long look at number 13, Zygeria, despite outside post, right?
I'm sure all of us are thinking about pick 5s on Friday, and this is the race where I think a broad spread is in order. I mean, I think the other races you might be able to narrow and take a stand, but I'd want a lot of coverage in here.
This is a race that has produced a series of upset winners over the years, the Juvenile Fillies Turf. So I agree with Andy. I think this is a race in which, we're probably putting Meditate right in the winner's circle, but so be it. It looks like a spread race. Maybe we can catch a price. We'll find out what happens in the Juvenile Fillies Turf. I should mention a couple other quick little tidbits. Chad Brown has won this race 5 times in 14 runnings, and the Miss Grillo Stakes has produced more winners of the Juvenile Fillies Turf than any other prep race. 5 winners come out of that race. And the winner of that race this time around was Shug McGahee trained Pleasant Passage, who's listed at 12-1, and she'll be making the third start of her career. That's a good angle. Third start of her career. Okay, that's the Juvenile Fillies Turf, a wide open scramble. The next race on the Friday card is a little less wide open, and it's the Juvenile Colts. It's the Juvenile. It's a mile and 1/16th, and one of the most heavily favored runners on the entire card. His name is Cave Rock. We're going to talk a little bit about Cave Rock. Andy, I'm going to go first here as we just take a look at the stretch run of Cave Rock's most recent performance. It was in the Grade 1 American Pharoah. This horse I think he's special. At least he's special this year as a 2-year-old. 3 for 3 of the top 6 highest figures this year by a 2-year-old. Cave Rock has earned 3 of them. And this is Cave Rock winning the American Pharoah in 1:43.05. He earned a 104 Beyer speed figure. That is astronomical. He's the 4-5 favorite, and he's the horse to beat. A lot of people are going to single him in their multi-race exotics. One of the reasons why I won't be is because of a stablemate drawn to his, on the far outside, number 10, National Treasure. In any other year, National Treasure would be one of the favorites in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile rather than an 8-1 shot. And I say that for this reason. National Treasure won his career debut, and in his second start in the American Pharoah, he finished second to Cave Rock. In his second start, National Treasure earned a 97 Beyer speed figure. That's a number that is high enough to win most American Pharaohs. But due to the supremacy of Cave Rock, National Treasure could be a little bit overlooked. He is on the morning line anyway at odds of 8-1. He's adding blinkers. When Baffert has two horses in the race, you have to take a long look at both of them. National Treasure was defeated by Cave Rock by more than 5 lengths. But National Treasure, making only the third start of his career, I think that he has upside. He will be on my tickets, recognizing that Cave Rock is something special. Andy, do you spread here, or is Cave Rock a single?
Unless you can give me a reason why National Treasure can turn the tables by more than 5 lengths, I can't go beyond Cave Rock. I do have one other opinion and one thing to say about this race, and I know I'll be annoyed during the running. The correct pronunciation of number 4 is fort, meaning somebody's strength. My fort as a handicapper is not figuring out European form. The announcer and also the owner of the colt call him Forte. That is wrong.
Thank you for that. Not only does Andy Beyer give us great handicapping information, he's also a linguist. So I'm going to try my best not to call him Forte and instead call him Fort. Speaking of Fort, let's just quickly give him a mention, Andy, because he is the second choice, I believe, and he won the Breeders' Futurity with a wide trip. Do you give him? I know he'll have to improve to defeat Cave Rock. So will National Treasure. But does Fort have a chance in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
I don't think so. There's just too much of a gap in the figures, and we certainly know that Bob Baffert's horses usually fire their best shot. When they've got an edge on the numbers. So I don't see an upset here.
Cave Rock, not only does he have an edge in the figs, he also has an edge in pace. He's the speed of the race. He should be long gone. He's the 4-5 favorite. Cave Rock probably going to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I'm stubborn. I'm going to throw National Treasure in on the off chance that Cave Rock backs up and National Treasure moves forward. But Andy and I both agree Cave Rock will be tough to beat in the Juvenile as the odds-on favorite. Okay, race number 10, the last of 5 races, Breeders' Cup races on Friday, is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And this is a race that has a profound European influence over the years. There have been 15 runnings of the Juvenile Turf. 10 of those races have been won by horses who made their most recent start in Europe. Trainer Charlie Appleby has won with 3 of his 4 Juvenile Turf starters. Aidan O'Brien has started 20 horses in the Juvenile Turf, 4 wins, 5 seconds. And I believe that both Appleby and O'Brien have the only 2 Europeans in this year's field. Number 4, Silver Knot. Number 1, Victoria Road. Andy, what way do you go in the Juvenile Turf?
I'm going to Appleby. I think this horse is clearly the one to beat. Interestingly, this horse's form is almost a carbon copy of the form of the horse who won it last year, who had made 5 career starts, had a final prep in a grade 3 race at Newmarket, got a time form rating of 102, and then came to the Breeders' Cup. Exactly what Silver Knot has done. And this horse has really solid class lines. I mean, the field, although they were just grade 2s and grade 3s that he was in his last 2 starts, he ran into some real heavyweights in those races. He is definitely the one to beat here.
That's number 4, Silver Knot. The horse that he beat, by the way, last time out, a horse by the name of, starts with an E. He came back and ran a second in a Group 1, so thereby validating the form of Silver Knot. By the way, the horse that Andy was speaking about that won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf a year ago, none other than Modern Games. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about Modern Games. He's the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Mile on Saturday. I agree that Silver Knot is the horse to beat with the same form lines as Modern Games a year ago. But I also respect number 1 Aidan O'Brien trainee Victoria Road. His form is very similar to the winner of the 2018 Juvenile Turf, and that was Line of Duty. Line of Duty prepped in the same race that Victoria Road won last time out. Victoria Road has won 3 in a row. His most recent start was at 1 mile and 1/8. You think he's fit? He's shortening up to 1 mile on Friday in the Juvenile Turf. Victoria Road has a look at odds of 8-1. I want to talk briefly about California 2-year-olds in the Juvenile Turf. It has been a long lesson in futility. There have been 26 horses running the Juvenile Turf whose most recent start was in California. None of them have won, and no California horse has ever hit the board in the Juvenile Turf in a Juvenile Turf run outside California. And the reason I'm going to belabor the point is, despite those anti-negative statistics, I think that number 2, Pax Wallop, actually has a chance, based primarily on the visual impression of his last 3 starts, including an impressive win last time out in the Grade 3 Zuma Beach. He's 3 for 3 on grass, Pax Wallop is. He's a 2-time stakes winner in California. He has tactical speed, and he can finish. And I know that California horses are usually throwouts in this race. I think that Pax Wallop is a very good horse. Is he as good as the European shippers? Probably not. But Pax Wallop, I'm going to include on my tickets. He'll get a good trip. And if the Europeans happen to misfire, which doesn't always happen, I think Pax Wallop has a look. Andy, what do you think about the California shipper Pax Wallop? A quick take on him.
I was caught. My eye was caught by the final fraction in the last turf start. I got 23.5 final quarter, but I'm just wary of Californians not on the turf. I mean, not just in the 2-year-old races, but in any races. I mean, I know there's been a big emphasis on grass racing in the West, but the horses are just several notches below what we see on a daily basis in New York. So unless somebody does something really special, I just put an X through the Californians.
Those are all valid points, and I agree. And we all sometimes, when we get stubborn in our opinions, we go, well, this time it's going to be different. This time Pax Wallop will show that California grass racing is better than everyone perceives. Right. And most of the time it turns out that it's not different at all. Because I'm stubborn, I'm still using Pax Wallop. Okay, that's a look at the 5 Friday Breeders' Cup races. Now we turn to Saturday. We have 9 races on the Saturday card, and we're going to start off with race number 3. It's the Filly Mare Sprint, and thank goodness, after last year's snooze fest with 5 horses in the field, this time around we have a field of 13, and there are some very good female sprinters going 7 furlongs in the 2022 Filly Mare Sprint. Andy, who do you like?
I like Frank's Rocket over Goodnight Olive. Frank's Rocket, people might be put off by the fact that, she ran at Charlestown last time, and, she's got a little second-itis in her, but she ran against some of the best Philly sprinters around. I mean, narrowly losing to Kimari and to Bella Sofia when Bella Sofia was in really good form. So I think it's one of those two. One horse I do want to mention in here is Chain of Love, the Japanese shipper. I mean, we for like 30 years we've automatically eliminated every horse from Japan who shows up in the United States, and then last year suddenly obviously the industry has had a huge turnaround. They won at the Breeders' Cup. They won in Dubai, and so I vowed to take a good look at any shipper from there. And I go back 3 races on Chain of Love. She finished 4th in a race in Dubai. The horse who was just a head in front of her, Dr. Scheibel, had run in this country and had run figures of 101 and 103. So I think Chain of Love is in that ballpark. She could be a contender here. Unfortunately, I did look up her last 2 races in Japan, and her last start, she won by a nose over a maiden who was 139-1. So I'm a little dubious of her recent form, but I did think that she deserved a mention based on what happened last year.
Yeah, last year, March Lorraine scored an impossible to find upset in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Love's Only You won a big grass race. So the Japan imports into the U.S., into Europe as well, must be taken seriously, which is not always the case. And by the way, that filly that you're talking about, Andy, Chain of Love, she's listed at 20-1. And I think that's a very valid point based on her head finish behind Dr. Scheibel. If Dr. Scheibel was in this race, he can't be, he's a male, but he would be one of the favorites. So at 20-1 with form lines that suggest she is fast enough, a very interesting outsider is Chain of Love. Andy likes Frank's Rocket over Goodnight Olive. I like the same 2 fillies in different order. I like Goodnight Olive over Frank's Rocket. Frank's Rocket is the only starter in this race with 3 successive triple-digit figures. Her last 3 numbers, 104, 103, 100. She's fast and she's consistent, and she will be in the hunt. Goodnight Olive, she kind of came to, I don't want to say came to hand because she's won 5 straight races over the last year, but her most recent start established her as a premier sprint filly in this country. That was winning the Grade 1 Ballerina by almost 3 lengths with a good number of 102. She has a forwardly placed running style, but she's not pace dependent. She can make her own trip. She can be forwardly placed. She can rally from behind. I guess you could say the same thing about Frank's Rocket. They're going to be in a similar spot in a race that should unfold at a relatively quick tempo. You have Slammed on the inside, Edgeway in post number 2. Number 10, Hot Peppers, is fast. So is Lady Rocket and Echo Zulu in post 12 and 13. This race should unfold at a very honest clip, and I think that benefits the 2 fillies that both Andy and I like, those being Frank's Rocket and Goodnight Olive. We should at least give a tip of the cap to Cece, who won this race last year. It's a completely different ball game in 2022. Last year, the odds-on favorite Gamine did not fire. There were only 5 horses in the race, and Cece took advantage of a good trip. Her figures, her best figures this year suggest she is as good as last year, but I think she needs to be better, and I'm not sure that she is. This is a tougher, deeper field, and I think Cece could be up against it. I make the morning line for the Breeders' Cup Saturday races, and I think I may have made a mistake. I made Cece the favorite. In hindsight, I wish I could have a do-over, but Cece is a good filly. She's 6 years old. Can she win the race? Of course she can. I don't think that she's going to be the favorite, but I like the same 2 fillies that Andy does. Okay, we're going to keep with the sprint theme and turn to race number 4, only this time we're moving to grass. It's the Turf Sprint, 5.5 furlongs on the Keeneland Turf Sprint. And Andy, I'm going to go ahead and start off talking about a horse that she's really kind of amazing. I'm referring to number 6, Highfield Princess. She's a 5-year-old mare, and she was a good, solid, honest, consistent, sprint filly overseas, mare overseas. But her last 3 starts have been incredible. They were all in Grade 1 races in France, England, and Ireland, and she won her last 2 by open lengths. Highfield Princess has speed from the gate, which you better have if you're sprinting in the U.S., and she also packs a huge late run through the stretch. So Highfield Princess, I typically am against, let me rephrase that. I have been suckered into thinking that European turf sprinters can compete in the U.S. turf sprints, and that often is not the case. I think that Highfield Princess might be an exception because of her style. She's fast early. She is strong late. She can position herself, and she probably will not get shuffled back like I've seen other turf sprinters do in this very race. I like Highfield Princess on top. Having said that, I think we at least have to discuss the morning line favorite. And Wesley Ward has said dozens and dozens and dozens of times that Golden Pal is the best horse that he has ever trained. Considering that Golden Pal has never lost a turf sprint in the U.S., maybe he's right. But Andy, who do you like, and what's your take on Golden Pal in the turf sprint?
Well, I mean, that 8 for 8 record in turf sprints in the U.S. is a little hard to argue with, but I just have a kind of have some qualms about his recent form. His last 2 wins were both against fields that were not so great. I mean, 2 races back, I see that the horse Thin White Duke, who's part owned by my friend and old colleague Steve Christ, and is a nice allowance horse. Just won a non-winners of 2 allowance race, but he was in a 3-horse photo with Golden Pal. And last time, Golden Pal again, won by a length and a half against what I think was just an okay field. I mean, Artemis City Limits, who was 3rd, has never won a stakes race. Let's say I would certainly, if I were playing sequential bets, I would certainly not want a single Golden Pal. I think this race, could prove an upset. I picked a Creative Force. I think he came out of a race against a very tough horse, Kinross, who's won 4 grade 1 and grade 2 stakes in a row. There are a bunch of horses in this field who ran in the Platinum Jubilee Stakes at Ascot, and Creative Force did lost by a neck there and finished ahead of your horse Highfield Princess. My guess in here is Creative Force, but I think this race is treacherous.
I agree. This race is treacherous, and I wouldn't want a single Golden Pal. I think he's going to be undervalued. I respect him. He could be loose on the. I don't know if he'll be loose, but could be the speed of the field. Golden Pal is very good. Whether he is worth backing at a short price, Andy, I'm with you. I'm a little skeptical on backing a low odds horse in a race like this, notwithstanding the fact that Golden Pal is a very, very good horse. Okay, let's turn our attention to race number 5 on Saturday, and it's the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. There are 14 Breeders' Cup races this year, and we have to make picks in all 14. Some races baffle me, and this is one of them. So, Andy, I'm hoping that you can provide some insight into what I think is just an absolute scramble of a dirt mile.
Yeah, well, you've got 3 horses in here with superior form and speed figures. Cody's Wish, Gunite, and Laurel River, and they're the 3 favorites. I thought Cody's Wish was very good last time. There wasn't much pace in that race. He still was able to close and beat Jackie's Warrior fair and square. Gunite has the classic look of a Steve Asmussen horse who his horses always take time, or he gives them time to reach their peak. We were seeing that, we saw that with Gun Runner, who was, didn't really become a star until late in his 3-year-old season. And, Gunite has been good throughout his career. And now his last 3 figures, 102, 101, 106. It looks like he is he's sort of on the move up to a new level. So, I give an edge to Cody's Wish here, but I think one of the top three figs is going to win it.
Well, if Cody's Wish runs another 112, they won't beat him. Here's my issue with Cody's Wish. It was a one-turn race, and I'm just not convinced that he is as effective around two turns. And I say that based on he's only routed twice. When I say routed, I mean gone two turns twice. One of them was a maiden race in the second start of his career, which he lost at 3-5. And another one was a comeback race this spring that he lost at 2-1. So I'm probably being overly critical without a whole lot to go on, but I've seen these closing sprinters in the past lose their punch around two turns. That's why I'm just a little reluctant to back Cody's Wish. No. I picked him second. He's a good horse, right?
He's won it a mile 5 times. It's still a mile.
It's a one-turn mile.
I think we're kind of getting a little too fine here.
You could be right, Andy. I'm going to be stubborn and say that number 6, Laurel River is the most likely winner of the Dirt Mile. Now, all he did last time out is win a 7-furlong Grade 2. It's a one-turn race. We know that he can go two turns, at least against Allowance Company. He won back-to-back allowances before the Grade 2 sprint last time out. 3 horses behind him came back to win stakes races next time out. He also defeated Grade 1 winner American Theorem. So Laurel River, to me, is a horse on the improve. He can stay two turns. He can weave through traffic. He split horses. He got a great trip last time winning the Pat O'Brien. And if you don't believe me, go back and take a look on the Formulator replay and see for yourself. He got a great trip. He was good enough to take advantage of it. I agree with Andy, at least in this regard, that this race probably is going to be won by either Cody's Wish, Andy's top pick, or Laurel River, maybe even Gnight coming back on 2 weeks rest for trainer Steve Asmussen. Race number 6 on Saturday is the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. This is one of those races that can go a number of ways. We're not going to spend a lot of time. Andy, who do you like in the Filly Mare Turf?
Well, one historical note. I mean, ever since 2016, every running of this race has been won by a foreign horse. Last year, a Japanese invader pulled the upset, and all the figures, the winning figures in all those races have been between 102 and 105. So any American horse who runs in the 90s is on a historical grounds we can eliminate. I think Nashua is the best of the European horses here. I mean, he's got a top trainer in John Gosden. His race at Longchamp may be better than we can tell by looking at the form. I read an article about that race and said that he was really compromised by drawing the deadly post 13 at Longchamp, that evidently wide draws are at certain distances there are really poison. But the horses, he's won major grade, she has won major Grade 1 stakes, and I think has a better looking overall record than all the other invaders.
Nashua, arguably the class of the field. She's one of 5 Europeans in this race. I went in a different direction, and I went with a U.S.-based horse, despite the recent history that seems to favor Europeans. I know where number 11 in Italian will be. She's going to be on the lead. Can she go 1 mile and 3/16? I don't know, but her last 2 starts have been dazzling. Andy mentioned the figures, and her last 2 numbers give her a license to win this race. A 102, 2 starts back, a 104 last time out. She's fast. If she can stay 1 mile and 3/16, and I don't know if she can against this group, I think in Italian can steal the race. My second preference is the same horse that Andy picked on top, and that's Nashua, who's arguably the best horse in the race, and the class of the field. Race number 7, one of the more heavily favored runners of Breeders' Cup 2022, runs 6 furlongs in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and his name is Jackie's Warrior. And geez Louise, the same Jackie's Warrior who lost the Breeders' Cup Juvenile 2 years ago as the heavy favorite, the same Jackie's Warrior who lost the Breeders' Cup Sprint a year ago as the heavy favorite. He was injured in the race. Third time the charm for Jackie's Warrior, Andy?
You know, his record is certainly pretty imposing. I mean, the figures are all good, and I somehow don't think he comes to the Breeders' Cup and gets psyched out. But I don't. There's only one horse in here who I think could challenge him, and that is number 2, Mare, who has run 2 solid races in a row. I mean, figures of 105 and 106, and it's Wesley Ward. But aside from her, I don't see who can threaten Jackie's Warrior.
I agree. I think Jackie's Warrior is long gone in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This race, surprisingly, does not include a whole lot of real, true speed. Jackie's Warrior will be on or near the front end. I don't think they're going to be going 21 flat 43 like we sometimes see in this race. I think he's long gone at a short price. I agree with you, Andy, that the mare, Mare, who could have run in the Filly Mare Sprint and been favored in that race, she's going for double the purse at 6 furlongs. She's fast, and she's fast enough for this field. So it's Jackie's Warrior and Mare for both Andy and myself in a race that should produce a formful result. Okay, next up on the agenda is race number 8, and it's the Breeders' Cup Mile. We mentioned this horse a little bit earlier when we were talking about last year's Juvenile Turf. The favorite in the Breeders' Cup Mile is Modern Games, trained by Charlie Appleby. Andy, take it away with the Breeders' Cup Mile.
Well, I don't have to say much more than 112. I mean, this is this horse's win in the Woodbine Mile was terrific, and there was no doubt about the validity of that figure. I mean, if you look at the form of Ivar, who is 2 post positions away. I mean, Ivar always runs in the low hundreds, and did so again. And Modern Games buried him by about 5.5 lengths. I mean, the Modern Games' previous start, he ran second to the best horse in Europe in 2022. I mean, I just think this horse's form is unassailable, and it's Charlie Appleby, who never loses anyway. So I can't go past him.
The only knock you can really apply to Modern Games is price. He's the 7-2 favorite on the morning line. He could go shorter than that. I agree with you, Andy. He's a good horse. He's in good form. His last start, I know he finished second, but he reportedly did not like the ground. He's best on firm around turns, and if he repeats his Woodbine Mile race, it's going to be tough for any horse to beat him. I don't want to pick 14 straight favorites, so every now and then I'll take a left-hand turn when everybody else is going right, and I went way out on a limb in the Breeders' Cup Mile, a horse who hasn't started in more than a year. Number 14, Domestic Spending. He's a grade 1 winner, so we know he is good enough on class. He's training up a storm, and I don't know what kind of trip he'll get, but with Flavian Pratt aboard for trainer Chad Brown, I'm going for an upsetter. Number 14, Domestic Spender, to lay back, somehow weave through traffic, and hopefully come and catch Modern Game. It's a lot to ask, but the price is right. He's listed at 8-1. Am I dreaming with Domestic Spending?
He's a terrific horse. I mean, in a different spot. I could have embraced him. And Chad, the fact that Chad Brown is making such an aggressive move, I mean, Chad doesn't do many foolish things, so I mean, I'm sure he feels that this horse is ready to fire his best shot. But this is tough. I've actually one other note on a horse in here that may be relevant. The second best on European horse on paper is Kinross, who has won back-to-back grade ones. And I was reading an article about his win at Ascot, and the jockey was quoted saying that they were happy that that the course was soft, and said fast ground might have been a struggle. So assuming that the course is going to be firm at Keeneland, this horse may be less formidable than his form suggests.
That's an interesting take on Kinross. He comes into this race with a form pattern similar to last year's Breeders' Cup Mile winner Space Blue. So if the course is firm, maybe downgrade Kinross a little bit. I'm glad you mentioned him, Andy, because he is one of the top contenders. Kinross. They have to beat Modern Games. Watch out for domestic spending at a price. Race number 9 on Saturday. This is a fascinating race. It's a fascinating edition of the Breeders' Cup Distaff. 8 horses in the field. 7 of them are grade 1 winners. And you can make a case for probably all 7. The Kentucky Oaks winner is one of the longest shots in the field, number 3, Secret Oath. Andy, you go ahead and start off with your take on the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Do you agree, at least in this regard, it's one of the stronger distaffs that we've seen?
Yes, I mean these are. I mean, certainly Clariere and Malathat have have great form. They've knocked heads a lot of times. I mean, they just about always run their race, except for Clariere's disappointing showing in her last. But Clariere, when the chips were down, beat Malathat twice, and I think she's legitimately the one to beat. I am against Nest here. She's a 3-year-old, and of course was running against 3-year-olds for most of the year, and it wasn't a great group, except for Secret Oath, who seemed to tail off as the season went on. I mean, there wasn't much competition for Nest, and then her one race against older horses was kind of a joke race. The Beldame drew a field of 5, and Nest was 1-20. I just think that she has not proved herself to be in the class of Clariere and Malathat. So that's my view on this field.
Well, Clariere is listed at odds of 4-1. Her best races certainly puts her right in the hunt. So, Andy, you like the Steve Asmussen trained Clariere. I like Steve Asmussen too, but I went a different direction, and I like this filly quite a bit. She's Society on the far outside. I think she's the controlling speed of the field. I'd be surprised if she's not on the front by herself. Now, who did she beat last time out in the cotillion? Not much. Who did she beat 2 starts back at Charlestown? Not much. I'm going to say it doesn't matter. She will be in a race by herself. Society will be. She's going to be loose. I think she's long gone. I would love to lock in odds of 6-1. I think she's going to get bet down a little bit. I like Society quite a bit. In fact, she's one of my stronger opinions of Breeders' Cup 2022. Okay. I think she goes wire to wire in the distaff. What do you give me your take real quick on Society, Andy?
You're right about the pace scenario, and I just think that she is really making. I'm not a class guy; I'm a figure guy, but I think she is making a leap in class, going against these tough seasoned older fillies. This is a little too much to ask.
It's a lot to ask, no doubt about it. And I know that the argument can be made that, well, geez, Asmussen, Untappable won the Cotillion and the Breeders' Cup Distaff. The difference is Untappable had already won the Kentucky Oaks early in the year. I agree. Society has a lot to prove. She's facing infinitely tougher company. I think she goes gate to wire. Andy likes to come from behind her, Clairiere. We both agree it's Steve Asmussen. Kind of similar to the Juvenile Fillies, and we both picked the Pletcher Fillies, only went in different directions. So Andy's going come from behind. I'm on the front end with Society. Race number 10 is the Breeders' Cup Turf, 1.5 miles. And, well, it's kind of not the strongest Breeders' Cup Turf that we've seen. And I believe, Andy, that would be putting it in politically correct terms. Am I right?
I think this is probably the worst Breeders' Cup Turf ever. I don't know where all the horses are. Europeans, running 1.5 miles on the grass is what they do, and this is I don't think any of the European horses really can withstand scrutiny. Even that the Euros have won 6 of the last 7 runnings of this race, but I don't know which one of them I could support here.
I kind of feel the same way. I mean, let's talk briefly about the morning line favorite, Rebels Romance. When was the last time you saw a horse win a Group 1 $150,000 race in Germany and come over and be favored in the Breeders' Cup Turf? It's never happened, right?
This horse is a phony. I've tried to. I saw that this horse is favored in the with European bookmakers, so I looked as closely as I could at this horse's form. He won a Grade 3 stakes 3 races back as a 4-5 favorite, beating a horse who'd never won a stakes race. So on the grounds of that kind of shaky performance, he goes to Hoppengarten, Germany, and he's the even money favorite, and wins by a neck. I mean, I couldn't discern, who these horses were, because they were all horses who just stayed in, do all their racing in Germany. So there were no lines of comparison to be drawn. But boy, I don't want Rebels Romance.
Well, I agree with you. I don't want Rebels Romance at 3-1, especially. So if it's not Rebels Romance, who do you like?
Just by the process of elimination, I like a Warlike Goddess. Yes, she's a filly. Yes, I would say in a normal Breeders' Cup Turf, she would be a little overmatched. But she's good. She always runs her race, and if you look at her, you look at the fractional times in the races she's in, one race after another. She's just run into ridiculous slow-paced races that should have compromised, any habitual stretch runner. I mean, a half in 51, a half in 53, and she's toward the rear of the field and still wins or is right there. So I think that she has really shown some quality, in that figure of 105. Against males last time, should certainly be good enough to get the job done here.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Warlike Goddess owes you one anyway. Andy, you were up at Saratoga in early September, and you only picked 9 winners on the 13-race card. It was Warlike Goddess, which kept you from immortality, right?
I would have had a sweep in the pick 6, except for the ridiculous ride that she got that day. I'll never forgive Joel Rosario from dawdling at the rear of the field while they were going 6 furlongs in 119.
She ran super in defeat, but she couldn't quite get there. Andy likes Warlike Goddess. I picked Nation's Pride. I have zero conviction. This is one of those races I referred to earlier. I had to make a pick. I didn't have any conviction at all. Nation's Pride is good. He's an improving 3-year-old. I think he's improving. He's running kind of the same figures. Back-to-back 96s, okay, against modest 3-year-olds. I don't know who's going to win this race. I picked Nation's Pride. Andy likes Warlike Goddess for better reasons than I can offer with my selection. I will guarantee you this. Pretty sure that Andy and I agree with our top choice in the Breeders' Cup Classic. It's race number 11. They're going 1.25 miles, and one of the fastest horses that we have ever seen is the 3-5 favorite. Andy, what about the Classic and Flightline?
Well, this I think I am in company with most of America's horse players that we want to see just how good Flightline can be. After the Pacific Classic, when he had the race wrapped up, Pratt just kind of took it pretty easy on him here in the stretch, and he still got a buyer speed figure of 126, which is the second best that we have ever awarded a horse, or second best that a horse has earned since we've been publishing the numbers in 1991. I thought if he let him roll, maybe he could have gotten a 130, and I'd love to see that on Saturday.
Flightline with that 126. We should mention, Andy, that 126 ties for the highest figure all time on fast. It was Go Sapper at Monmouth on a sloppy track, got a 128. But the 126 on fast ties for the fastest, along with Will's Way, Formal's Gold, and also a horse whose name I am forgetting right now. That's the gentleman in the Pimlico Special. Well, Bottom line is he's a fast horse, right?
Yeah, I just like to see him. This is obviously one of the freakiest talents that we've seen in our lifetime, and I'd like to just see him put the cherry on top with a monster performance.
That's kind of what everyone is expecting at odds of 3-5. There is exacta wagering on the Breeders' Cup Classic. Maybe we can make some money by identifying not only the winner, Flightline probably, but how about a runner-up, Andy, and maybe a non-second choice runner-up? Who would it be?
I like Taba. I've been interested in him for his whole career, because he started out with breaking his maiden with a figure of 103. Then they threw him into the Santa Anita Derby in the second start of his career. That's freaky for a horse to be able to to make that kind of a leap. And then the owner evidently insisted on running in the Kentucky Derby, which is a really great way to run a good horse. And fortunately, after that debacle, Taba came back. He was back in the hands of Bob Baffert, and he is, he's now back on the track that we would have thought at the start of his career. And the way he started his career, you would think, well, this horse could run, is good enough that maybe at some point he'll run a figure of 115 or 120. He may be moving in that direction. So, I think we could, we could see an explosive performance from him.
I agree with you 100%, Andy. It's amazing that Taba was not ruined by this spring campaign. And I think that what happened last time out in the Pennsylvania Derby, it is a testament to what kind of a horse this horse might be. Taba could have been ruined by that ambitious spring campaign, was not. And last time out, the light bulb kind of went back on. He took dirt inside. He powered away. It was a fast race, a 108 fig. He's not close to Flightline yet, but I agree with you, Andy. I think he can zoom right past the likes of the other 3-year-old in the race, and that's a very good horse by the name of Epicenter. So Andy and I both agree Flightline over Epicenter in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Flightline over Taba.
Excuse me. Thank you. Yes, Flightline over Taba. It's Flightline over Taba. Those numbers 4-1. Only one way, by the way. One way exacta, 4-1. Okay, that's a wrap on the 14 races for the Breeders' Cup. Andy, thanks for joining us today. We do have a few questions that we are going to field. So if our producer, here we go, Jeffrey from California, who is the most likely vulnerable favorite on Friday and Saturday? Well, I'll identify at least one. I'm not sure that he'll be favorite, but Andy and I both agree that Rebels Romance in the turf should not be a short number on Saturday off of form in Germany. It's not the strongest turf field, but Rebels Romance to me looks a little bit dicey. What do you think about that?
I completely agree.
Rebels Romance now on Saturday, a vulnerable favorite. Next question. Jeff from Minnesota, does Secret Oath have a chance in the Distaff? No. She was a good filly in spring. She won the Kentucky Oaks. She never took a step forward. Andy, wouldn't you expect during the course of a season for a 3-year-old filly, a 3-year-old colt, any 3-year-old for that matter, to his or her figures to improve as the season unfolds? That hasn't been the case with Secret Oath, has it?
No, not at all. And I mean, we now know she can't beat Nest now, and I've expressed my feelings about Nest in this field. So Secret Oath is not a contender.
I agree with Andy. Secret Oath, we're going to both toss her out. Next question, Roger from New Jersey. I rely quite a bit on the excellent buyer ratings in my handicapping. Are they more significant in high-end horse racing like the Breeders' Cup, Andy?
No, they're they're important everywhere. I mean, when I devised the figures, I was not thinking about the Kentucky Derby or the Breeders' Cup. I was focused on $3,000 claiming races at Bowie, and I had never even kind of considered the effectiveness of the figures at the upper echelon of the game. And what has happened over the years that we've seen that the numbers are tremendously important at the very top, and that notion is verified by the fact that breeders regularly cite the figures. If a horse has run a figure of 110, 115, that'll be in the ads when the horse is going to stud, because the ability to run those big numbers really makes a difference in top stakes races and to a horse's stud prospect. So whether it's 3,000 or the Breeders' Cup, it's a great tool.
Well, as of today, it's Flightline 126. Andy's looking for a Flightline 130, maybe in the Breeders' Cup.
We'll do our calculations as always. There will be no fix-in, but I'll tell you, I'm secretly hoping for to make a 130. Incidentally, before we were published in the DRF, and we're just doing the numbers privately, but with the same methodology, there was one horse who twice cracked the 130 barrier, and that was the sprinter Groovy. It can be done.
It can be done. Fast horses win fast races,
Yeah.
And they actually win good races. And like Andy said, they also win claiming races as well. Along with pace, condition, and class, speed figures, one of the top essentials of handicapping. Ken from Oklahoma, what buyer speed figure do you think to win the BC Classic? Andy, what do you think? I mean,
I think he's got to at least duplicate his last, and with the 126, and we'll see. I hope the jockey puts him in an all-out drive to get to 130.
That would be Flavian Pratt aboard Flightline in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Okay, next question. Who do we got here? Mike from New Jersey. Your most interesting long shot horse on both Friday and Saturday's card. Well, forgive me for this shameless plug, but on Thursday morning, I will be taping a segment devoted entirely to Breeders' Cup long shot. So I'm not going to give away the store right now, but I will put Andy on the spot. Andy, you mentioned Chain of Love as a potential.
No, I felt I had to mention the horse, okay. But I mean, if atomically is 10-1 on Friday, I mean, that's my horse.
Atomically in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies for trainer Todd Pletcher. She'll have to beat the other Pletcher, Chocolate Gelato. Next question, Tom from New York. Do you believe that this year the European turf runners have a distinct advantage? I don't know if you need to qualify it by saying this year, do you, Andy?
No, I mean, it's their game. And, American horses are, really not bred or trained, certainly to be 1.5-mile turfers. There is still relatively little breeding in this country that is really solidly oriented to producing turf runners. So, I think the U.S. horses have done surprisingly well in recent years. Considering that this is historically a dirt-oriented sport. So
well, it used to be. In California, it's kind of tilted the other way. Half of our races in California now are on grass, which is mind-boggling. And the interesting thing about California grass racing, it's when these horses ship outside California, you really can't normally find them against top class company. That we're in out on the West Coast. We have a bunch of, good horses from Europe. They're allowance caliber, and they come over here and they become superstars, mostly trained by Phil D'Amato. Going global, cost $100,000 in Europe. She became a multiple graded stakes winner in California. It's not a great group out in California. The East and Midwest have much better grass horses, but they both play second fiddle to the Europeans. That's the bottom line for that. Patrick asked if there's moisture in the turf course, what horses benefit? Well, there's not going to be. The weather forecast is clear. The turf is going to be firm on Saturday, so I wouldn't worry about any moisture in the turf course. As of Wednesday morning, it looks like we're going to have fast and firm.
I mean, one thing handicappers should do at the Breeders' Cup when looking at the European horses is to look at the course conditions, because in Europe they will run on soft turf courses. You see 6 furlongs at 116 in a Group 1 stake, and they're still running. They don't take them off the grass, and and certain horses, favor that kind of condition, and others, favor it being firm and, drawing the distinction, but between the, horses who favor one kind of going versus another is really important when you come over here.
Agree. By the way, just to reiterate something that you brought up a little bit earlier, Andy, when we talked about the Breeders' Cup Mile, you mentioned that you saw a report regarding Kinross, who's, if the course is firm as we expected to, maybe Kinross is a horse that you might want to downgrade just a shade. He seems to like more give in the ground than we expect on Saturday at Keeneland.
Right. And, Longchamp, in most of the big races that we see in the PPs here, the course was very soft, and so the long shot shippers, are maybe a little suspect, not because the racing is weak in France, but just because the horses who ran well, favored that kind of going.
Cool. What do we have left as far as questions? Jim from Maryland, the Juvenile Turf Sprint has the Platinum Queen. We do not see 2-year-olds beat older. I have to say I am impressed. Should I be? You better believe you should be. I can't remember in the U.S. a 2-year-old running in a grade 1 against older. It happens occasionally overseas. And yeah, you should be impressed. The Platinum Queen, a 2-year-old filly, beat older in one of the most prestigious races in France. Agree, Andy, or not?
Yeah, well, this is not like just the trainer's choice. I mean, there were a couple races in Europe this fall that the conditions were for 2-year-olds and up. Normally, a 2-year-old would not be eligible, to run under the conditions that you'll see in the U.S. For races for 3-year-olds or 3 and up, and the same in Europe. But these were special races.
They are special. By the way, it's kind of interesting. The Prix de l'Abbé, whoever wins that could be considered a contender for the Breeders' Cup Sprint and/or Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. The Platinum Queen would not be eligible for either of those races. Right. She said it's for 3 and up. All right, next question. Lee from Ohio. What horses did the post position draw help or hurt the most? Andy, going through the contenders, I couldn't find any, top choices that were particularly compromised or received a super beneficial draw. So I'm going to kind of take a pass on this unless you have a different take.
No, there was the turf race on Friday where a horse that I was looking at drew post 13, and I've forgotten over there.
The horse's name is Zygera, drew post number 13, right? And here's one other thing about post position. A couple of years ago, Caracante went into the Breeders' Cup Mile at Santa Anita. He drew post 14, and for that reason, I did not pick him, but he was 30-1 on the board and at a price, and I'm not saying Zygera will be 30-1, probably a third of that, but Zygera is going to be a big number. If you agree with Andy that the horse has a chance, I don't think post position is reason to get off a long shot. All right, next question. That's it. Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Daily Racing Form Breeders' Cup webinar. A couple of real quick items. Once again, before we sign off, I just want to remind everyone, if you join DRF Bets today, you get a $200 match bonus. That's $200 free and access to Formulator past performances. You can go to drf.com/bet for more information. Breeders' Cup PPs are available now. Shop drf.com. And finally, Daily Racing Form is offering Breeders' Cup packages that include clocker reports, betting strategies, past performances. If you're not using Formulator, you're doing yourself a disservice. So you can go to drf.com for all the above. I'm Brad Free. I want to thank Andy Beyer for joining us today on the Breeders' Cup seminar. Andy, thank you so much for pitching in.
Well, it's been fun, and let's hope we're not embarrassed by Saturday night.
We'll find out Friday and Saturday. 5 races on Saturday, Breeders' Cup races, 9 more on Saturday. I'm Brad Free with Andy Beyer. Thanks again for joining us on the DRF Breeders' Cup webinar. See you next time.